Good evening and welcome to our special Christmas edition of the Power BI Manchester User Group. My name's Alex Tove, who's never attended one of these sessions before. Tonight we've got a special football-related Power BI Manchester. We've got four fantastic talks from four fantastic speakers who will be talking about the likes of FIFA, fantasy data, and also how to predict your tips for the Christmas fixtures. Without further ado, I'll just do a quick intro about myself and the user group. The Power BI User Group's been going for 4 years now. So 4 years ago, this December, I caught up with John Bayliss. We decided to copy the London one and set it up. And we've been going now 4 years. We've had over 50 meetups. We've got over 3,000 members. And our attendances pre-COVID were around 80 to 100 people in central Manchester. So when we do resume normality, we'll hopefully have sessions in Manchester and a chance to get to network and share slides and have a few pizzas and beers. As I said, we've had some good ratings, and I hope you've enjoyed our webinars this year. We've now done 9 webinars for Power BI Manchester alongside 3 series of Power BI Lunch and Learn. About myself, I'm a long in the tooth BI recruiter. I've been doing it for 16 years now. I head up the BI data analytics team for Rob Walters. So if you are looking for a new role, or if your team is looking to recruit, do get in touch. I'll help you as best as I possibly can. We've now got our 2021 salary survey out, which is if you are looking for a guide about what salary you should be earning or day rate you should be earning, or you're looking to talk about a pay increase in the new year, do get in touch. I can send you a link to request our salary survey. If you want my contact details up below, so do get in touch. About tonight, so after my brief intro, we'll have Ryan Bentham about streaming data, streaming football data with Power BI and Power Automate. After that, we've got Jamie Cook using Power BI to visualize what's happening in the FPL. And then a very similar one, James Best is who won our Power BI Lunch and Learn competition. He's going to show how he built his competition-winning Dream Team Power BI report. And then to finish off, we've got Sheb Raymond, our co-organizer, talking with his second session about Beat the Bookies. This one will be his Christmas hot tips, and to give you a guide of what to put your money on this winter. Before we finish, we'll hope to finish before 8 o'clock in time for the Sheffield United Man United game. We'll also do a quick announcement of some prize winners, people in the Fantasy Football League, who's our prize winner for weeks 1 to 12. But also we've got a Lunch and Learn winner we'll be announcing as well. So if you have any questions for Ryan, Jamie, James and Sheb, do put them on the right hand side chat box and we'll answer the best possible. But without further ado, I will now let Ben introduce Ryan, so Ryan can share his slides. Evening, Ryan.
Good evening.
How is it in Greater Manchester?
Oh, it's sunny as always.
From one tier 3 to another.
Ah, yeah.
Is that an original Man United 92 shirt?
Original, I cannot confirm that, but
a retro remake.
It's the same design.
So Ryan, you spoke at our session in January. Seems a lifetime ago.
Just, yeah. Yes.
Who would have thought? Yeah, who would have thought when we did your first talk in January what would happen? But really, thanks again for popping them together. And because we're on time limited this evening, I'll let you share your slides now, so that
okay.
And then we can talk through your streaming data talk. Good luck. I'll catch you later.
Perfect. Just want to double check that we can see my screen.
Yeah,
we can all see that. Looks great.
Just
minimize what is now the picture of me, if you would, please.
I might keep that there. Just there.
Oh, you can, and we can support whichever club. Anyway, I'll let you get on with it. Good luck.
Fantastic. Okay, guys. Yeah. So really happy to be doing this again. As Alex said, I did a kind of a meetup in Manchester, I think in January. Very nerve-wracking, but I think it went well. So somehow convinced me to do another one. And yeah, so today's kind of topic, I want to talk about kind of streaming football data and how we can use Power BI, and with the help of Power Automate, we can produce dashboards that show kind of live streaming data, and we can do some pretty cool stuff with it. So I can jump straight in. A little bit about me, kind of Ryan Bentham. I'm a Power BI contractor, a developer, consultant, geek. I've been doing it for about almost 5 years now. I kind of live and breathe Power BI almost to a level of being quite sad. So I can have my day job, Power BI, get home, and I kind of do stuff like this. Just absolutely obsessed with it. And I guess most of the people who have joined us tonight are on the same path or as sad as I am about it. I've got a LinkedIn. You can check me out on there. I've got a website, rviz.co.uk. I've got kind of some geeky things on there around football, financial reporting. So that's always cool to check out. And there's a picture of me and my new puppy from earlier today. Trying to bite my face off, as you can see. So that's a little bit about me. What we will be talking about in this presentation is a streaming dashboard using football data, kind of live scores. And there's a little picture there, and I'll show you a quick snippet of how it looks. So something like this. Dashboard sits in the Power BI service, gives us streaming data straight from an API, shows live scores. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And why are we talking about it? Well, it's a meetup. These are the kind of things we talk about. But also, for those of you who are kind of new to Power BI or have used Power BI for some time, so it always seems more interesting when you talk about this kind of stuff. You know, you can be quite easily bored talking about financial reports, health and safety reports, you kind of day-to-day type reporting. And I think by using this kind of data, like football data or gaming data or anything like that, it gets you a bit more creative, thinking outside the box. And it's a good way of showcasing what Power BI can do. And yeah, so I think that's kind of why I enjoy doing it so much. Okay, so I'll talk about what's involved in what I've done to give a bit of background in what I'll be covering. What I'll be covering. So, like I said, it's a Power BI dashboard, and the dashboard sits in the Power BI service, and it's supported by a streaming data set. And for those who are not familiar with the streaming data set, that's something you can configure in the Power BI service. You can hook it up to APIs, Azure data sets, and some other third-party connectors. So that's kind of where our data is going to come from. It's going to come from an API actually. So there's a service called API Football. I'm not sure anybody's kind of heard of that. And it gives you access to certain endpoints and certain feeds that provide football data, so scores, fixtures, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to be hooking up an API to a Power BI stream, and that's going to be kind of configured using Microsoft Automate. And so again, for those who, I won't go into too much detail in Microsoft Automate, but I'll kind of show you the flows that I've used. And for those who don't really use Power Automate, it's a great tool and it works seamlessly with Power BI. So we'll be using that to take the data from the API to push into the streaming data set. There's a bit on custom D3 visual. So the main visual I'm using in the dashboard is a custom visual. So if you have time, we can go into that. And I guess all those pieces come into the final kind of dashboard. So I'm going to go back through all these again, but in a bit more detail. So we'll go into the dashboard and I'll start talking around it so we can understand what it's doing. Okay, so as I said, this dashboard sits in the Power BI service. So it's kind of it's hosted online. It can be accessed by yourself, or you can share it with other people. But for this demonstration, I'm just going to be showing it kind of as it is within the Power BI service. And the dashboard itself is comprised of a few things. We've got this kind of custom visual here, and this is I guess a typical timeline of events of a football match. So I've configured these tiles here to be filtered for a particular match. In this case, I filtered them for kind of last night's game against Liverpool versus Tottenham as a demo. And what this does when it's when it's live and populating, as you can imagine, as we kind of go through the match, these events start populating, and you kind of see what happens. You can see Salah scored 26th minute and so on. As it's running, there's like a current minute, so current minutes you're in, there's a score, and as you go down, you've got some other bits and bobs. If it's whichever data set it's pulling from, and we'll come to data sets in a minute, the rest of the report, the rest of the dashboard will be populated with those matches. So I ran this earlier for yesterday's Premier League games. So as you can see, it's populated yesterday's games. And a timeline of goals. It's not very exciting. Sometimes it looks better when we've got more matches going on. This table here shows the latest goals being scored. So as you can see, that's kind of the timeline going up to that horrible 90th minute goal from Firmino last night. Bit sickening.io. As you can tell, I'm a United fan. And but then down here we've got current scores. So when this is live, you're always aware of what the current scores are. Goals by type. We only have normal goals. Other goals, obviously penalties and things like that, free kicks. It's also on there. And then this here is just a bit of fun. So when this is running, you can. I'm not sure if you'll hear this playing, but you can play that just for a bit of fun. So that's how it looks, and I'll go into a bit more detail on how it kind of all works and how it comes together. So I guess the first area, this streaming data set, that's kind of the engine behind this. And again, for those of you who don't use streaming data sets, I can kind of show you how they're configured, how to get started. So within the Power BI service, within a kind of workspace, you may have seen that when you're creating new content, there's an option here to create a streaming data set. And when you click into that, you have these options here. You have Azure Stream and PubNub, which tends to be like third party. Azure's part of Microsoft, but I tend to be honest, I haven't really used those two services. I tend to use this API connector here. And the great thing about this is you can define a data set through this, and then you can configure it to connect to APIs or any other kind of streaming service. So for example, if we go to next, you could create a sample data set, and as you start filling out these fields here, you can see this starts populating this structure down here, and this is kind of starting to configure what your data set will contain. And what you do, so you can configure a streaming data set up all the fields. You choose your data types, and when you create that will give you a data set, and that data set there, as it is currently, has no data in it. You just configured it, and there's not really much you can do with it. If I just go back into that, I'll show you a few more options, and I'll show you how I've connected it to an API. You have this setting down here, this historic data analysis, and by default that's turned off. And really, what that means is this data set at the moment it's purely streaming. So if there's no historic data, there's no history, and if there's no history, there's no data set created. So you can't create any like supporting reports. So if we wanted to create a dashboard that had kind of real-time tiles, for example, if we wanted to see real-time traffic to a website, we might want to configure a streaming data set, connect it to our data source, and turn historic data analysis off, because then we'd have the data going straight through to the dashboard, and we would see real-time reporting, almost like a loop. The data will keep kind of overwriting itself, and there's no data stored anywhere. And because there's no data stored anywhere, you can't really do much with it apart from view it on the dashboard tile. By turning this on, this creates like a data set you can actually access. But when I say access, you can create kind of reports on the back of it. So as an example, if I create this with this turned off, if I then wanted to go and create a new report, and as you can see, that data set is not available for me to use because it's not configured to store history. If, however, I go back into this, I define it, historic data analysis, and say, right, I want to start storing history. I refresh that. If I then go into new report, as you can see, it's now available. And with being now available, I can connect to that. I can create a report on the back of that data set. And that's how I've approached this dashboard. So I've created I'll just delete that. So it's gone. I'll show you the one I've created for this dashboard. It's a live football scores report. And I've configured all these columns down here. And these kind of all intentional names. So I had an idea of what data I was going to pull in before doing this. So I kind of knew the namings of my fields. But as you can see, this is kind of quite a bit of data in this. I've configured it to show historic data analysis. And now that's kind of set up, it's kind of ready to take data. And the method I've used to get data kind of into that data set is via PowerAutomate. And again, I won't go into too much detail on PowerAutomate, but I'll kind of show you how the data is going from A to B, essentially. So I've got three flows set up. I have this top one here is for all leagues live, and this is the one I typically use because this would give us the data for all the current matches that are live. I then have a streaming data set by date. So, for example, this one here, this is from yesterday. So I can run a data set for kind of yesterday's games. And similar for this, I can also specify a league. So I could say, right, I want the Premier League results from yesterday. I'll go into this top one to kind of demonstrate how it works. So initially we have a recurrence. So that's just saying this flow is going to run every minute. And the reason I've picked a minute is because that's the limit on the API. I think if you try to refresh any kind of more frequently than that, you get a slap on the wrist that just kind of stops you from doing it. So every minute it kind of runs these steps. First step being simple kind of endpoint. I'll open the documentation for the API as well. So I've subscribed to this football API. I think I'm on the free tier. With the free tier, you get a lot of calls you can make. It's quite lenient, and you've all these kind of endpoints available down here, kind of different categories. The ones I use are kind of all around results and fixtures, leagues. You can also bring in odds. You can bring in betting and all sorts. It's really powerful. Just scrape the service of this really. Yeah, so I pull in the results from leagues. I can't find the. There we go. So these here fixtures. And there's like in-play games as well. There's all sorts of endpoints you can connect to. So in PowerAutomate, we have this endpoint here, which is bringing in all the live events. You put in your keys to kind of allow you access. And then these next steps, what they do is they start, they start cleansing the data, putting it into like a friendly format that you can use. This parse JSON is a really kind of cool feature. And what this is doing is it's taking the body, it's taking the response from this call, and it's cleaning it and presenting it in this format here, which you can generate from a sample. You can run it, take the sample and paste it back in. And so you can see there, you can see all these kind of data points which you might recognize. That gives you all the data, that gives you the response from the call. And then what happens is we have this loop. This loop kind of runs through the data in the body. It looks for the fixtures object, which is near the top. So it looks for the fixtures, which is here. And then it loops through, and for every fixture, it pulls out the events. And the events in this case are the key events from a match. So a goal, a substitution, a booking, they're all classed as events. So this loops through, it gets the response of all the live fixtures, loops through the fixtures object, brings out all the events, and then those events get pushed into our Power BI streaming dataset. And this is currently in preview, but I think it's going to be released soon. This is kind of a native connector straight into Power BI from Power Automate. And you can connect to your workspace, connect to your dataset, and then you connect to your table, which I had. I have changed the name of it, which is why the names don't match up. But as you can see here, all these fields that I've already predefined, I define those names with kind of these in mind. So it's just a case of mapping these up. So it's pretty cool, and it's all kind of quite intuitive. So if you click onto one of these fields, you're presented with all the available properties from the response. So it's just a case of drag and drop in and click in. And you can also be a bit more creative. So in this case, I've just done like a latest score, team name. So that's the home team, that's the away team, and then goals. So I've configured that to bring the data in. And then what happens is, when that's running, the data kind of is pulled from the API, comes through Power Automate, and populates into the dataset. So that kind of explains how the data gets in the report. In terms of kind of creating the dashboard, I can kind of talk through that. So if we go back to kind of this section here, so we've created our streaming dataset, and then we can, once you've got this dataset available to connect to, we can either create a report in the service by connecting to it, or for more kind of flexibility, you can go into PowerBI Desktop and then connect through to it, which is what I've kind of done in this case. And when you connect through to a streaming data set, you'll know because you kind of have this message down here, live football scores report in football streaming data set. And from here, you can start dragging your things in, start building out your visuals. I won't go into this in too much. I've got something pre-made. Yeah, so anything can be created in desktop, and once your report is configured or created, so I'll go to one that I've already done. So this report also has a connection to the dataset, and I've built out all the visuals that I want in the dashboard, and not too concerned how this report looks, because this report is only being used to store these visuals. These visuals actually get pushed into a dashboard once they're published. So don't need to concentrate too much on the presentation at this point. But in this case, yeah, I've got these tiles all configured. We've got a data set here, which comes from the streaming data set that's been connected to Power Automate. I've created a few measures just to bring in some enhancements. One thing to comment actually, with this being like a live connection to a data set, there are limitations. So you can't kind of combine or blend any additional data to this data set. For example, you can't create columns. You can create measures, so just keep that in mind. You're quite limited to the data that's in the streaming data set, but you can say make use of measures, which should cover most scenarios. And yeah, so you can create the report in desktop. Another not limitation, but another consideration is it's a streaming data set, but the data set won't update automatically in the report. So if you're running your kind of streaming data set and you're working in a Power BI Desktop report, or you're working in a Power BI service report, that data will not be refreshing. You'll have to manually refresh. But once you've published a report and once you've pinned those tiles into a dashboard, they then become live. So that's another thing to keep in mind in case you think you might think you've broken something or the connection's not quite right. Once you pin it into the dashboard, it will work. So I will go through the steps I took to push this into a dashboard. So once this is published, and I've got a published version here, so this live scores football report. So these are kind of all being pushed up. What you can then do is start pin these into a dashboard. So to pin into a dashboard, you have these little pin icons above a tile. So if we go on a new dashboard, let's call this one, for example. I'll just put a few in just to show you how it's done. Go to dashboard. As you can see, so now these visuals are sat here. These will automatically update. These will update as the stream updates. So kind of that's what you want, isn't it, with a streaming data set? Okay, so that's an outline of how it kind of all works and how it comes together. And I'm going to try and do a live demo of it. I've got some examples already loaded up just in case it doesn't quite work. And this is dependent on what games we currently have. So I've got one preset to the Copa del Rey, so I can try that and see if that works. So okay, I'll show you the steps that I take to kind of flush the data out and load it back in. So if we go back into the streaming data set, if I turn this off and save it, that takes all the data out of the report. So in a minute, it should go blank. Fingers crossed. There we go. So the data has now been taken out of the streaming data set. So if I go back in and turn the stream, turn the history back on. And now the data has been cleared, but I got a notification somewhere. No. So yeah, so now the data has been cleared, and I can. Wait 2 seconds. Yeah, data's been cleared. I can start a flow. So I will pick this kind of league, all leagues live, and I'll turn this on. And now it's turned on. If I go back to my Copa del Rey dashboard, fingers crossed, we will start seeing some data come through. And this is the bit where everything kind of falls down. So let's see if we do start seeing some data. Oop. My hope is that we something has happened in these games and start getting some data through. But you never know. This could not work. Please make sure that I've turned everything on okay.
It's a typical sort of FA Cup 5th round Tuesday night event, isn't it, in Spain at the moment, obviously.
Yeah, here we go. We've got some things going on. So, okay, so we've got a few goals here. What's going on? I don't recognise any of these teams. I don't even think. So this isn't just Copa del Rey. I think this is every game that's live currently. So we've got all sorts in here. Yeah, we've got all sorts. Up here, this featured match. I think I had this defaulted to one of the Copa del Rey games. So maybe that's not going to populate. But I guess the idea is, if the flow is running, if the data flow is running, and it's connected to the API, then this dashboard will just kind of update, populate. What I will do actually, as a better example, I'm going to stop this because I don't like all those random teams that we're seeing. I think there's some kind of random games going on. So I'm going to delete this out. I'm going to take this data back out. I'm going to turn this off. Let's wait for this to go. Okay, and then turn this back on. And then I'm going to run an example I know that works properly, which is from last night. So yeah, so yesterday's games. If I turn this on and run that, then hopefully this one will at least populate, and it should, yeah. So can you imagine this? Imagine this is like real time, and these goals are coming through as and when they happen. You can see it trickles through. And I think the Liverpool game was at 8, so that'll start coming through last, I believe. So where we are now, Leeds, good win by Leeds. There we go. So then you can see there, it starts coming through. And yeah, second goal at the end by Firmino. So yeah, that's kind of how it works, how it comes together. Hopefully, there's kind of use cases you can apply this to. It's probably more suited towards I don't know, kind of online retail reporting. I don't know. I don't know how much time I've got left. You know, if I can go into the custom visual if we have time, or I can just leave it there.
You've got about 10 minutes, so let's just have a look if there's anything in the questions. Yeah, there's a question from Ash, so let's read this out, because this was I was thinking about this as well. Did you end up using premium connectors for Power Automate? And I guess there's a bigger question around there. If you leave this running all the time, you know, what is that costing you, or do you manage to squeeze that into the freemium, if you like, portion of Power Automate? Obviously, I suspect you're paying for Power BI Pro, but can you talk around the licenses for us?
Yeah, so with Power Automate, you do have limitations. I was on I think the free trial is quite generous, but what you'll find is when you try to schedule it, that's where it kind of gets you. So during your trial, obviously you can do anything for the first 60 days or so. It'll then start taking the scheduled flows offline until you buy a kind of an updated user plan. I think the user plan is about £11 per month, but it's unlimited for you as a user, so you can access any of the premium connectors. So if we go into this connector here, the recurrence is that will require a per user plan, and I think, I'm not certain, the HTTP connector used to be premium. Maybe it's not anymore, because the other day when I got prompted to buy a license, the instant ones were still working, and they also have the HTTP connector, which allows you to use APIs. But yeah, I would use the trial, the free trial, and it is quite generous, because you can run it twice. You can get the free trial, and you can also then have a second go at it, which is quite nice. Power BI doesn't do that. Then after that, yeah, there's a per user license at £11 per month.
Yeah.
Then in terms of like I guess bandwidth, I don't think there's any limits. I mean, there probably is at some point. I guess the problem I've had with leaving this on, and I did this the other day, I left it on by accident overnight, and it was more around limits on the actual API service, because I'm on a free. You can see there, 2 days ago I reached 85%, and I was panicking because I thought, I've got a demo in 2 days. But luckily now, I think that's just the daily limit. It is quite generous, this API. So
okay.
Yeah, that's the only limitation I had, really. It was the limitation on the API calls, and then kind of having that per user license for Power Automate.
I suppose also if you stream but store the data set as well, then you could start chunking up gigs of data in your Power BI report, and therefore you have a limit on what is it, 1 or 10 gigs per report in Power BI Pro. I can't remember.
Yeah, that I guess that's another consideration. Just kind of mindful of how much you're bringing in. I admit I haven't really tested the limits for the streaming data set. Yeah, definitely consideration. Yeah,
certainly interesting from a perspective of obviously football, as you said. You know, nobody in their spare time likes to really look at financial data, and hence this is a great example of using Power BI.
Good.
And engaging you know, something we're all generally interested in. I guess, as you say, from a financial, from an organization or business perspective, you could use this sort of streaming data set to, I don't know, see the number of queues in a call center, then potentially the number of calls which are being answered within a certain amount of time. All of that sort of telemetry you can get from, you know, from a call system would be one example, I guess. I think we went over to TalkTalk in Manchester on one of the Power BI user groups, and I think they were using streaming data sets to have a look at how much bandwidth was being used by their customers, so that they could adjust things they could adjust their service in real time as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's got a lot of use cases, hasn't it? It's
yeah. Any idea on so obviously we can't again, streaming data is something I've never looked at, and I'm just wondering how it would fit with composite models, or if it doesn't at all, if you could bring some other data in that way.
No, you can't, unfortunately. Once you've connected your report to that streaming data set, you're limited to that data. So as an example, in this report here, you don't have your usual option to transform your data. So you can't add any data in Power Query, you can't enter data, you can't see a table view, you can't right click and add columns. So there's no way of adding additional kind of row level data to that model. It's all got to be done either at source or via measures. So there's also that kind of limitation to it.
Okay. Bro, we just got another couple of questions then before we wrap up, and then we'll introduce Jamie. Who's asked this? Possibly anonymous. What visual have you used for the featured match?
This one here.
I'm guessing so. Yeah.
Yeah, this one here. Yeah. So this is a custom visual, and it's using there's a third-party app called D3 JS Visual, and you can get this in the marketplace. It's just a free third-party visual, and with that you can render your custom kind of D3 code. So if you're familiar with using D3 or JavaScript, you can basically be quite creative, create anything you want. You bring it in here, you get your kind of your D3, your CSS, you map that back into your data set, and just let your imagination run wild, really. If people want to get started with that, I recommend using JS.Fiddle website. So you can kind of render things online first. You can use all your code. You can render it, and then you can pretty much drag and drop it straight into that visual in Power BI with a few little tweaks to some kind of variables. There's a bit of documentation online about it, but it's all done through a custom visual, that one.
Brilliant. And you know, this is why people should attend multiple talks, because you talked about that visual back in January as well, if I remember right. Ash just says there's an API limit of sorts for Power Automate, which I think he did put a link on. Maybe he's deleted it. So there are some documentations on that.
My goal is to try and break that limit then.
yeah. Well, there must be enough football going on that you could probably do that.
Yeah,
okay.
I'll give it a go.
We'll give it a go. And Francisco, and welcome, because he's a good friend of ours. He says, could you calculate columns with the new update of the composite models? And I guess that's just a question that we don't really know the answer to at the moment. So something to look out for on that one. Yeah, okay. So we can probably go.
I was saying, I think there's updates coming soon, isn't there, to allow more flexibility around composite models. So maybe that's going to include these streaming data sets. Let's hope.
Yeah. I must admit, I've seen the updates, but I've not read them. And actually, my fault. So Ash has published, and I've just published that into the Q&A, everybody, the API request limit allocations for the Power Platform. So, Ryan, that's your bedtime reading tonight after the Sheffield United match, yeah?
Well, it depends how many beers I've had, because if we don't get any penalties, I'll be drinking.
You'll be all right. All right, listen, brilliant. That's fantastic. Thank you very much for that.